Honestly, I think it's adorable. Yeah, that's one of the things it's cute about MMA fans. They're so adorable in that they get so behind somebody like little kids, and then no matter what that person says, they have to believe it.
Yeah.
You know, I would assume if I know Connor the way I think I know him at this point, he probably got rid of the whole sparring tape altogether because he can't
Yeah.
even afford for it to leak.
Welcome to my next guest, and someone who I actually idolize, not even the boxing side of things, but very much so as a commentator. For me, and this is really hard to say, but I'm a commentator myself, but to me, the best commentator in the world, and not a bad fighter, two-weight world champion, Mr. Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie, how you doing?
My pleasure, man. I'm doing good. Pleasure to be on the show, man. I really appreciate
Pleasure's
you having me on.
absolutely all mine, mate. Absolutely all mine. So what we try and do here, we do something completely different than other people do. It's not just the whole. We're going to talk about boxing, no doubt about that. But we want to kind of know and teach the kids coming up about you and kind of what makes you tick. So, kind of starting from the very very beginning, Paulie. What got you into boxing?
Um, I had a prototypical boxing story. It's kind of a typically, I think boxing is usually a last option, I guess. At least for me, I didn't start boxing until I was a teenager, so I didn't have the prototypical passage in boxing where it was, you start as a kid, somebody takes you to the gym and you're a child and you just kind of develop. I started when I was 16 years old. I got thrown out of high school and I kind of just, I guess, needed a method to keep me on a straighter path because I was kind of going on a crooked path. And
Okay.
my grandfather took me to the gym. To make a long story short, I got expelled from high school and he took me to a boxing gym to keep me out of trouble, just to give me a hobby, to give me something to, constructive to do, to just give me something to do where I wouldn't be hanging out and messing up even more.
Yeah.
I don't think he thought it would develop me into a fighter. I think he just thought, because I never had really discipline or anything I did prior to that. So I can't imagine that he thought I'd become a fighter, but I think they just wanted me to have something that I was doing that was keeping me out of trouble, something that I was doing daily because I no longer had school since I'd been expelled. So I think that was the original goal. And it just, from there, just as things do, it sort of evolved into something bigger.
It's mad, and I've said this so many times, Paulie, to people, to like the uneducated eye. A boxer and in the sport of boxing, it's so brutal at times. It's gladiators, two gladiators to coming together, but it's saved an hell of a lot more people than it's lost. It
I think so.
really, it's just the discipline, the teamwork, um, you know, the lessons it teaches you. I think they should, kind of bring it back into schools. What do you say?
Yeah, I think so too. And in a lot of ways, it's like I said, it's sort of a last option for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, very difficult to succeed at a world class level enough to make impact money. But I do think that even people that started boxing that don't end up being fighters, there's a discipline that they learn.
It gives you such a. It's weird me even saying this to you. I was a fighter a long, long time ago before I retired because I had a bad injury, and just the mental strength it gives you. Even it's just compared to normal people, a normal day today. And we had a situation today where one of my friends was having a bit of a bet with his friend about losing weight. So I'm telling him I'll lose weight the day before, like trying to cut his water and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Yeah, well, I've done pretty well." I'm like, "No, no, no, no! You don't do pretty well. You either win or you lose, and that's what
Yeah,
to normal people. And that sounds stupid, but to normal people who haven't been in this industry and done what you've done, it takes a special kind of person, doesn't it, to do what you've done?
yeah, it does. And you know what it is. Society doesn't help either. Society is plays a very big victim mentality. There's a lot of Freud in society. As opposed to somebody like a B.F. Skinner who kind of had the opposite views of Freud and probably, in my opinion, should be the view that society should take. The victim mentality, the feel bad for me mentality,
Yeah.
the this is too difficult, I don't want to do this mentality, and it's okay if I don't do this. I don't think leads to anything successful or anything positive. So I really do think that you know, the society's viewpoint on things doesn't help in
Yeah.
creating, new generations of boxers. But I do think when guys get into something like boxing, the reality hits hard, and the reality of everything sort of forces you to come to that realization that, you know what, if nobody's going to hand this to me, I have to go and get it. I have to go and take this, and boxing is that perfect metaphor for life where, if you're nobody's going to hand you a championship, nobody's going to
No.
hand you even the tournament winning trophy in an amateur tournament. Nobody's going to hand you that. You've got to literally fight for it. So you got to be better than somebody else. You got to compete for it. So, you know, and nobody wants to hear your excuses. Your opponent certainly
Yeah.
doesn't want to hear your excuses, so, or your sob stories. So I do think that something like boxing, even no matter what kind of society we live in, even if I do think the society's mental approach is not the best right now, I do think that anybody who gets in boxing sort of gets that understanding, gets that comes to that realization, and I do think it can give them character for the rest of their life, whether they become a boxer or not.
I completely agree, and I wasn't going to say this at this point, but I think it's really important that I bring this up now. I've got I'm outspoken view, now and again, but I'm quite passionate like you, and I've got to say, Paulie, as a fan as well as someone who's in the industry, I bloody love it, mate, when you get all excited and you start getting dead annoyed. It's so much fun. Like it honestly, it really, really is. Your passion for the sport is unreal. And we live in, like you say about society, and we live in a time now where everybody wants a quick fix. When I saw a video of you when you were 2-0 a little bit earlier on, and you were just like a little kid, I thought, God, he's worked hard. He's worked bloody hard to get where he is. Whereas now, you
Mhm.
get 100,000 followers on Instagram or Twitter, and then you're fighting for stupid money like Logan Paul and Jake Paul. I mean, I hate it, mate. I hate it. But what's your thoughts on it?
I think boxing in a lot of ways has shot itself in the foot, and not made itself cro popular in a crossover sense. A lot of times, a lot of things boxing has done through the years, the business of boxing has turned it into a niche sport. So
Mm.
when somebody like a Jake Paul comes into the sport, and it creates this sort of alternate reality. I don't know if you've seen Back to the Future Part Two, where there was this alternate 1985, and there was
Yeah,
the reality of 1985. And it's I feel like the Jake Pauls of the world have given us this alternate reality of boxing as opposed to the real reality of boxing. And unfortunately, we've come into this problem because we've had our version of Biff in terms of the sanctioning bodies and the promotional entities that have caused the things to have the political strife in boxing to have turned it into a niche sport. They've taken it away from network TV, where in the United States, where it was a major network TV sport at one time. They started making people pay for it in every sense of the word. And so, once you start making people pay for it, and you start to come with pay-per-view, and
yeah,
or in UK box office, constant, people sort of lose interest, or they're only willing to pay for the absolutely extreme fight,
yeah.
and you still see the mega fight, the crossover fight, the Fury Wilders of the world. Those kind of fights will get buys from even crossover fans, at least the United States, even casual fans. But
Yeah.
the mega fights, the big boxing fights that we have to pay for here, only boxing fans will pay for them.
It's mad money
Putting
though over there. Why is it so expensive? I mean, it's only like £25 here, which what's that?
yeah
$35 over there. It's like
yeah
something like £100 or something, like
yeah
$100.
yeah yeah.
Why?
It's 75 and then 100 if you want it in HD. Listen, they
How
sell it.
can you afford that? Do you know what I mean? To a
Yeah.
normal man, like it's
Yeah, exactly. And you can't afford it to a normal man. I've always thought that, boxing is overpriced. It's been, done in a greedy fashion by
yeah.
the powers that be. And I do think it does need a sort of a new scheme, a new setup. People are so greedy that they just keep shooting their own sport in the foot.
Yeah, I think I couldn't put it any better myself. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Completely agree. I want to talk about you and your career because you fought everyone. Like literally everyone. I'm going to mention our Brits first, but the likes of Hatton and Khan and Broner and Cotto and yeah, I mean you fought absolutely everybody in your career. You had an amazing, amazing career. Question really, which was the hardest fight for you of all the ones you had? I mean, you had something like 43 or 40 odd fights. I mean,
Yeah,
what was the
yeah.
hardest one?
The best fighter I fought was Miguel Cotto, but
Yeah.
the toughest stylistic fight I had, where I just was, it was just a bad style matchup for me, and it was probably the most difficult to win, was Amir Khan.
Okay.
He was taller. He was, he had this lanky frame, very good legs, young. He was quick to the trigger. Um, and it was I was a little older, and also I was very weak at making that weight by the time I fought him. As a matter of fact, I never fought 140 pounds again.
Right.
But nonetheless, stylistically, it was just a very big nightmare for me. Cotto, on the other hand, was the most complete fighter.
Yeah.
But because he couldn't match my speed, I was able to stay competitive in that fight, regardless of how difficult it was. He was very intelligent. He was very cerebral. He was a more complete fighter,
Yeah.
and probably is the best fighter I ever fought, and also the hardest puncher I ever fought. But
Really?
for
Okay.
in terms of stylistic nightmare, for me, Amir was my stylistic nightmare. It was just a ridiculous. I just it was just so difficult, so
Yeah.
frustrating to deal with him, and he ended up having a great career himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to Cotto, I mean, a lot of people in some areas you kind of come on the scene in some areas of the world when you fought Cotto in a weird kind of way. I know you'd been on the scene, but you get the idea. And you were so brave in that fight. I mean, God, you didn't have a broken jaw. You had a really bad cut. Do you feel that you may have done a bit better in that fight if the cut wouldn't have been such a problem?
I wouldn't say the cut was the main issue. The main issue was probably breaking my orbital bone in round two,
Uh-huh.
and also Cotto being an excellent fighter doesn't help me either. That's the best fighter I ever fought.
Hmm.
But I do. But the that ring. If you look at that ring. I'll take it to my grave. But that ring may not have been legal. I just I just I just had I just had a 3 ring circus managing and promoting my career at that time. So I didn't have anybody really looking out for me in the way they should have.
Okay.
Because you don't make that deal as a provision of services agreement, which it was, and then just completely hang me out to dry and just say, okay, go do what you got to do, and just let everything be. If you look at the ringside photographers in that fight, um, they're laying down, like completely laying down on the outside of the ring apron. The ropes are taken in so much that they can lay down flat. I mean, you look at the fight. You can look if you watch that fight. Look at the ringside
No way.
photographers on the outside of the ring. They're laying down on the mat. They're laying down outside the mat, and they're still not inside the ring. You know,
You're kidding me. That's how
they're
far in the ropes were.
that's how far in the ropes were. If you watch that fight, you'll catch that.
I've never
Um,
noticed, to be honest,
and
but
yeah, and to tell you the truth, at that time, I had heard of rings being different sizes, but I had never experienced like a
okay.
fight of that magnitude where these things really come into play.
Yeah, yeah.
Granted, Top Rank was the promoter of the house promoter, so they were going to have um, certain stipulations that where they would have the advantage, and that's part of boxing. Listen, that always happens. If you look at Ray Leonard, he had a ring the size of a stadium every time he fought.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just you have the politics and you own the and you take advantage. I don't have. That's not my problem really. Like obviously it's an issue, but Cotto being the great fighter that he was is the biggest issue, obviously,
Yeah.
that you can't do anything about it. So I don't want people to think this is an excuse because that's the best fighter I've ever
Yeah,
fought,
but
and I never
still,
shy away from that.
small
But
ring
I do
against
think
Cotto.
I do think when you get your team, they have to look out for you, and it's not just about the money,
Yeah.
that day was it was a learning experience in a lot of ways. I fought a great fighter who obviously being in the ring was such an excellent fighter
Yeah.
taught me a lot of things. I learned a lot about myself and dealing with adversity and whatnot. And I also learned a lot about the business of boxing too, which unfortunately I would learn time and again, even through robberies and the Juan Diaz fight
Yeah.
and the Adrian Broner fight and whatnot.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's a treacherous business. It's a very difficult way to make a living.
It is, yeah.
Fighters fighting at a world class level is certainly a difficult thing, but also something that really makes you feel accomplished, and I think fighting the one thing I can say about Miguel Cotto, and I've even told Miguel this, that fight ended up changing the trajectory of my life in general because I've
Okay.
never had financial problems after that. Before that, I had
Right.
hand issues, just financial issues, just going through kind of just wondering constantly how I was ever going to get over the hump
Okay.
and just be able to live comfortably. I just couldn't be comfortable, and I always had that after I fought Miguel Cotto, just that fight led me to other things and other things and other things, and ever since then I've never wondered since then if I would be able to pay my next month's bills, so my next month's expenses. So that was certainly a life changing experience for me,
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I
and
really,
I have to thank Miguel Cotto for that. And the
he's supposed to
and
be
the
a great
experience
guy. I've never
and the
met him. He's
experience
supposed to be great.
and the experience of having fought him, I think, made me even better than I already was, and really led me to the 2 world championships that I ended up winning later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there was a point in your career, a fight in your career, where you'd had long hair at the time, and I don't know if any,
Yeah,
and it got cut halfway through the fight. To the people
yeah.
who haven't seen that, I mean, what a weird thing to happen. Talk, educate us around what happened there.
Yeah, yeah. I decided I always had crazy hairstyles in my career, so I decided that I was running out of ideas. I didn't know what to do anymore, you know. So I came up with these Jamaican braids ideas, you know. I was thinking a lot of stuff, sort of like a Lennox Lewis type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Shannon Briggs, you know. I thought like I could pull that off. I could pull that look off, and I got them done. Took 6 hours to get them done. I grew out my hair. I had some extensions. It took 6 hours to get them done. And now I'm fighting, and we tape the hair together. I figured that's what Lennox does, so I can do the same thing. That's what Shannon Briggs did, so I can do the same thing.
Okay.
Uh, my hair is not like Shannon Briggs and Lennox's hair, though. So despite taping
Yeah.
my hair is more. I guess what the word I'm looking for is fine. It's more
Okay.
slippery, and
Okay. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tape just, obviously I had a veteran opponent in front of me, Love Morindo, and he would break the tape off in every clinch, and the hair would come loose, and it would just get in my face, and I was so frustrated because I broke my right hand in the fight as well. So I had to at the halfway point of the fight, I have one hand. I get left with one hand, and I got this hair on my face. So I didn't want to cut the hair because I had taken 6 hours to do it, and I kind of wanted to style around with it for at least a couple of months,
Yeah.
because of all that work I did doing that hair. But I think between round 8 and 9, or between round 9 and 10, eventually my cut man just took the scissors and Danny Milano, and he just cut my hair because it was either we're gonna lose the title or we're gonna lose the hair. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
So we had to make sure we kept the title so that we would secure the Ricky Hatton fight later in the year.
You don't just chop someone's hair, though. I mean, what was like the conversation in the corner? Was it, listen, I know you've spent loads of money on your hair and you've spent all this time doing your hair, but I've got to let it go, bro. I've got to chop it off, bro. I mean, what was the conversation like
The
there?
conversation at the conversation at first was to cut it. I said no, I'm not cutting anything, and that was it. Then I would come back after every round, and I'd have them try to retape it and whatnot. When we
Okay.
got to that three quarters part of the fight, around round 8 or 9, we realized, with my hand broken, and that my opponent is now fighting his way back into the fight. I think my cut man didn't even bother to ask me. He just started cutting it. And if you watch, they're cutting my hair, and I'm not even complaining about it anymore because I've resigned myself to the fact that it's either the hair or the world title, and so I'd rather keep the
Yeah.
world championship.
I was no choice in the end. Right, fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. I've wanted to ask you for so long. This is not a new thing. I know we were going to speak, but the Conor McGregor thing. When you were sparring with Conor McGregor, and I'm really good friend. I'm really good friends with Joe Cortez. I'm going to see him
Okay.
in a couple of months up in Vegas when I go up there for a
Mhm.
stag do.
If,
Um,
if you know Joe, he'll tell you what happened. I've heard a
he's
couple
never
of
told
people.
me though. I've
I've
asked him,
heard
but
a,
he's
a
never
couple of
blatantly
people who
told
were
me.
close to him. A couple of people who were close to him told me that he told them what really happened. A couple of people, but he's not. It depends how close you are with him.
Uh huh.
I've been told by a couple of people. Sam Jones, the manager from England,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
um, um, uh, and then one or two other people that spoke to Joe, that have a relationship with Joe.
Uh huh.
He told them what really happened, but otherwise, I guess he's sort of on a gag, on a gag type of order or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how it can still apply after all these years, but
Yeah.
Connor's very protective of his image. It's bad enough for him when he's getting beat up every time he fights, so he doesn't want to also have. This is like the one thing he has left that has him winning.
Yeah.
It's his little highlight reel so he can fool everybody. But
But without going into
I
it too much, though, I mean,
mhm, mhm,
was it? You don't have to, because for obvious reasons. But
mhm.
did it really play out like he said?
No, I mean, even the supposed knockdown, if you look at it, he's pushing my head down, and I'm sort of trying to pull away. There's also the clip is also from two different rounds. It's not from the same round, because he doesn't have a clip from the same round. He doesn't have 5 seconds running consecutively in that whole sparring where he's not getting punched in the face.
Uh
So
huh.
he's either throwing something, but even when he's throwing something, he's going to get hit back at any point. So he can't even give you 5 or 6 or 7 concurrent seconds running because he's going to get hit at some point in those 5, 6, 7 concurrent seconds running. So he had to take 2 or 3 seconds from one spot and 2 or 3 seconds from another spot. Um, I think it's adorable. Yeah, that's one of the things it's cute about MMA fans. They're so adorable in that they get so behind somebody like little kids, and then no matter what that person says, they have to believe it.
Yeah.
You you know, I would I would assume if I know Conor the way I think I know him at this point, he probably got rid of the whole sparring tape altogether because he
Yeah.
can't even afford for it to leak. I would assume that that sparring session probably doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was adorable. I thought it was cute because a logical fight fan will tell
Adorable.
you, no, it is
What a word.
because because it's always cute when you have like such an affection for somebody that like
Okay.
you'll defend them even when you clearly know you're wrong. And
Yeah.
you'll even put yourself in denial. So that's what I
Right.
think is cute. I think it's cute that when people can do that about somebody they've never met. I think it's quite interesting. But nonetheless, no, there was no knockdown. If you look at even the video of the knockdown of the slip knockdown, whatever you want to call it, he's holding my head behind my hand, his hand behind my neck, and I'm trying to pull away. And then he kind of sweeps the right hand underneath, which is just a little slap. It's not
Yeah.
even a shot that would knock anybody down. And I go down because the hand that he has on top of my head slides off, and since I'm pulling away, it's like when you play tug of war and then you let go of the rope. What happens? The other person pulls, right? So it was the same concept. I'm pulling my head away. He's pulling down on my neck, and,
Okay.
and then he throws this little slap. But when he throws that little slap at me, the hand that's on top of my neck slides off of the top of my head, so I go down, and that's what ultimately the momentum of me pulling away goes down. I mean, if you really look at the little slap, I mean, is that really going to knock anybody down with Gear and
Yeah.
16-ounce gloves? I mean, if you look at that little slap, you count that as a knockdown? I mean, really? I mean,
It
I
depends
don't,
how desperate you are, really.
especially it depends how desperate you are, and also when you consider that the other part of the highlight where he's hitting me with that left hand is another round. It was the last round where I was tired, but when I'd gone 12, and I probably won about 9 of those rounds. But and the only reason I didn't win all 12, and the only reason he probably doesn't get stopped is because I'm not in shape. But
Yeah.
really, if I always try to tell people, and people in boxing will know this, if they're not in denial, you probably have to be in really good shape to give somebody a 12-round beating. But
Yeah.
to take a 12-round beating, to go the whole 12 rounds taking a beating, you have to be in even better shape. You need
Mm-hmm.
to be in even better shape to do that.
Amen.
So everybody knows that, I was not in shape when I went to camp. He was trying to make an example out of me. And I think he was so frustrated that he couldn't. He was so frustrated that he got beat up nonetheless. And believe me, I was insulting him during the sparring session because I knew what he was trying to do to make me go
Yeah.
12 rounds, knowing I'm not in shape. And I realized what he was trying to do. Like, so when they told me we were going to go 12 rounds, I said, I'm going to make a fool of this guy in front of his whole team. And because I know no matter, even if I'm not in shape, he doesn't have the talent to
Yeah.
stay with me. So I knew I was in him. So the whole time I'm calling him names. I'm talking junk to Dana White, who's sitting outside the ring, and Lorenzo Fertitta, who's sitting outside the ring. I'm talking junk to his team, and all this other. I think he took it personally, which I guess he should have, because I took it personally that he tried to make me go 12 rounds out of shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I used to have championship training camps, I used to put in a guy for 3 rounds, and then another guy for maybe 2 rounds, and
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
guy for maybe 4 rounds. I would constantly alternate my sparring partners and do a long 10-round sparring or 12-round sparring, but I would do it with different sparring partners so that
Yeah.
each guy was fresh. So it would challenge me, because it's not a challenge. Those guys aren't getting ready for 12 rounds. I'm getting ready
Yeah.
for 12 rounds. So I want to be challenged consistently in that training camp. He was getting ready for 12 rounds. I'm not getting ready for 12 rounds. I just got up off my couch.
Yeah. He
So the
was
fact that
taking
he
the
wanted
piss
me to,
there, really, wasn't he? For being honest.
yeah, well, he was trying to make me go 12, and then he figured if I couldn't go 12, he would be able to tell everybody that he stopped me in the gym because the sparring
Right.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
scheduled for 12, and I couldn't finish the 12-round sparring. So just on that principle alone, I had to make a fool of him now. And I don't think he anticipated me being able to do 12 rounds. The only reason he even won any rounds was because I wasn't in shape. The only
Yeah.
reason he didn't get stopped, I would have stopped him in that sparring session. It's unquestionable, and that's why he doesn't even show you the sparring, and it's why he never fought me.
Yeah.
Because there's so much money. There's so much money in that fight at that point. There was so much money in that fight. It was
Yeah.
more money than any fight he could do. So
Absolutely. God,
but he knows
ridiculous money.
it was unquestionable what happened then and what would have happened if I'd been in shape. So the only thing he could do was run from it as much as he could, and of course the irony is that I told people he had no balls. He was a quitter, and he was, as soon as things get tough, he's the kind of guy that will quit. You just got to put him in a situation. And while nobody wanted to believe me at that time, the irony is that's all that has happened ever since that fight. Ever since, including in that fight, and ever since he's been fighting since, he's been put in positions where he's been put in tough, and he's always quit. And that was I read that through him even when I was in camp. I said this guy's all fuss, he's all bluster, he's all show. he's all smoke and no fire, you
Unless
know.
you're an old man in a
And
bar. I don't know. He likes going 12 rounds with them, I've heard.
yeah, yeah, they did that, and that's also more proof, you know. Again, if unless you're lying to yourself, you know, how come the old man in the bar gets the punch in the face when he insults him? How come the guy in Miami who took a selfie with him gets his phone smashed? But when I get
Yeah,
in his face
yeah.
3 weeks after that sparring, 3 weeks after that sparring, when I get in his face and tell him to his face in front of the assembled media that he has no balls, he does absolutely nothing. How is that? How is that possible? Because he already knows what's going to happen. With me, if you raise your hands, you're going to get hit. You're
Yeah,
going to get hit. 100%. You're going to, if you even think about raising your hands, you're going to get hit, you know?
yeah.
And he knows that. He's already been, he's 3 weeks prior, he was getting beat up by me. So you can just kind of put the context of the character into perspective, you know? Why does the old man get hit for saying he doesn't want that piss of a whiskey? But but I tell him in front of the assembled media, right to his face, right where everybody can hear, did you bring your balls? And where are they? And he does absolutely nothing because again, a punk knows when he's going to get punched in the face, and he doesn't like the feeling of it. And then a real fighter doesn't care if he's going to punch in the face; he'll still fight, right?
Yeah,
So
Paulie, it's the definition
ultimately,
of a bully, mate. You know, it's the
yeah,
definition of a bully. Pick on people you know you can beat.
and that was why he ended up doing what he did with the pictures, and he made a highlight video, which it took him 2 weeks to edit, mind you. That highlight video came out 2 weeks after we sparred because it was so difficult to probably make for him to find a few seconds here and there that he could
Uh-huh.
splice together. But since he couldn't bully me, he had to do it that way. He was so angry that he couldn't bully me that he ended up having to create a different image of the events that happened. And like I said, that's what's so adorable about MMA fans. They're so cute the way they defend a guy like that, you know. And no matter how much
Adorable.
he loses, every time I see this guy getting beat up, yeah, every time he fights, he's getting beat up. He's become the human pinata because you hit a pinata. What do you do with a pinata? You hit it, you bang up a pinata, and you get a reward at the end of it. So
Okay.
he's like he gets you the biggest reward. He gets you the most money and the highest paying opponent you can find, and then you just get to beat him up. That's all he does. It's not like he's
Human
gonna beat you.
pinata.
He never. It's not like he ever wins,
It's
but
not
you
candy,
just
it's
beat him up.
money.
Yeah, yeah. You just get to beat up on him. I mean, bless
Yeah,
Dustin Poirier. He just got to beat him up twice in a row. That's a nice amount of money, you know. So it was it's very. I thought the psychology. He's been an interesting study in psychology. I'll tell you that. And so have his
absolutely.
fans. Really, his fans too.
Adorable. I just love the way
Those
the
those
use of
adorable
adorable.
those adorable people. You know you love it.
I just love the word adorable. It's so sarcastic. So I've got a question from a commentator to a commentator, and I've
Mm-hmm.
never had the opportunity really to do it before. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made?
On the air,
Yeah,
um, I don't know, man. Honestly, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I don't think I've made mistakes on the air.
you've never
Really, I
done
don't.
any. I mean,
I
I
don't
had one when I called the it was there were two South American fighters, and
mhm.
I called him the wrong name the entire fight, and then
uh,
when he announced him in, I was like, shit, like the
uh,
whole
well, I'll
fight.
tell you what. You're probably working some smaller level fights. I'm
Yeah,
sure I
yeah,
would have
that's
fallen into that category if I don't.
clearly why I'm
If
not
those names aren't
commentating with you, mate.
recognizable. Yeah. I've had situations where, like Fury Wilder won, where Fury clearly won the fight from me, and then I made a stink about the decision. I caught a lot of hell from my bosses at that after that fight. They were so angry at me, and then they were angry because Deontay Wilder left Showtime and went to Fox for the rematch. And he said it was because of our commentating team. I wouldn't say that was a mistake. I'm actually happy I stood my ground
Yeah,
and call it the way it should have been called. But I thought it was interesting to try to see the politics of boxing trying to interject themselves, even in the commentating. So that was
I don't
quite
like that, mate.
interesting.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
like. I did a quote, if you like, from me only on Tuesday this week, where
Mm-hmm.
like whenever I do commentary, it's straight down the middle. I don't give a. I know it's about money and who's paying you. I get it, but I just for the sake of the sport, I hate it when
Yeah,
people don't go down the line. Tell them what's actually happening.
yeah,
This lad's caught him with a massive right hand, and just because he's the away fighter, they don't even say it. It just really, really pisses me off. I mean,
yeah.
what about you?
And,
I mean, are
and
you in the same stance as me?
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat as you. And also, if there's a fighter that I know, it doesn't matter. If I'm your friend, I don't care. If I'm commentating a fight, I'm not your friend during the commentating.
Yeah,
I'm going to call the fight the way I see it. As a matter of fact, me and Deontay were actually pretty cool before that fight, but ever since then we haven't been.
wow.
Um, because he thought being cool meant I was going to bring my pom poms and cheerlead. I don't do that. Not
Yeah,
when I'm working. So, nonetheless, Now, having said that, they gave us three great fights, and they were entertaining nonetheless. And I think I speak for myself and all boxing fans, which I still appreciate those three fights. Got this channel on YouTube now called Paulie.tv. I discuss all things boxing. It's sort of a fun channel. It's a little bit of banter, a little bit of my analysis of boxing, a little bit of going down memory lane. Just all discussions boxing. It's Paulie.tv. If anybody wants to like and subscribe, anything I do there, it's cool. Don't worry about it. But I've been enjoying having the channel. I'm also, obviously I got my Instagram and all my other social media platforms.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I just want to say, a massive thank you for coming on the show. You're a top guy. Didn't expect anything less. Thanks for coming on, Paulie, mate.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. And everybody check out Paulie.tv.